Hi friends, it's Valerie. Welcome back to another week's What's for Dinner. If you're new here, welcome. I would love if you would hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. I put out What's for Dinner videos every week, and I've got 3 inspirational meals for you again this week, and I hope that you enjoy them, so let's get started. This first meal is Crockpot Lazy Lasagna. I'm starting off by taking a pound of ground beef that I've just defrosted in my microwave, and I'm going to go ahead and place that into my large skillet over medium to medium high heat. And I'm going to use my meat chopping tool and just break that apart and let that meat brown, making sure to break it up along the way because I don't like very large chunks of ground beef. Next, I'm going to be seasoning that with some garlic powder and some onion powder. The original recipe called for dried minced onion, but I didn't have any. And some dried basil and oregano, as well as some dried parsley and some salt and pepper. And I'm also adding some red pepper flakes. Then I'm just going to go ahead and give that all a good stir and continue to break that meat up. It is pretty much almost done cooking at this point. I am also cooking my noodles. I have a large pot of salted water that I brought to a boil, and I'm going to be using lasagna noodles. The original recipe called for egg noodles, but I wanted to use up some lasagna noodles that I had. I kind of broke them in half so they could fit in the pot, plus I'm going to be cutting them up into some smaller bites. And you're going to want to make sure to let those noodles cook to al dente and not let them get too soft because they will still be in the crock pot and you don't want them all mushy. I left them al dente and they came out perfectly. And then back to my meat. The original recipe didn't call for any vegetables in this. I just had a little bit of frozen peppers and onions and like fajita mix that I would use for some omelets, and I wanted to use that up, and I thought this would be a perfect chance to just kind of use up that small amount. And then now you're also going to add in your jar of sauce, and I'm just using the Prego Fresh mushroom sauce. And I added a little water in there to get the remaining sauce out, and then I'm just going to go ahead and stir that all and get it all coated with the sauce. Next, I'm just grating up some mozzarella cheese. You're going to need 8 ounces of shredded mozzarella cheese, and I actually probably used more than that because I really like cheese and I have a lot of mozzarella to use up, so I'm just going to go ahead and grate that. Next, I'm going to be placing around 8 ounces of that mozzarella cheese into a bowl, and you're going to need a container of cottage cheese. This is a 16-ounce container of cottage cheese. You can also use ricotta instead of cottage cheese, and then just go ahead and give that all a good stir. Now I went ahead and pulled my noodles out, and I've just cut them into some smaller bite-sized pieces or smaller pieces because the original recipe called for egg noodles, and I did want, like, even though I'm subbing lasagna noodles, to have smaller bites instead of like large noodles that you have to cut through to scoop it out and serve it or whatever. So yeah, so I just kind of broke those up and I'm putting them on. You're going to layer a third of the sauce on the bottom of the pot, and then you're going to go ahead and place half of your noodles on top of that. And I'm kind of using a little bit of that sauce in between some of the noodles. I don't want to put too much because I don't have a lot extra, if that makes sense. If you like your dishes, like your pasta dishes like this, to be very saucy, you should add some additional sauce. 1 jar would not be enough for you. It's perfect for me because I don't like it extra saucy. But if you do like that, add some additional sauce to that. And now you're going to go ahead and top those noodles with half of your cheese mixture. And then you're going to use another third of your meat mixture on top of that and kind of just spread it out as best you can. And now you're going to go ahead and repeat your layers. So add the other half of your noodles on top, and you're going to go ahead and just top that with the remaining half of your cheese mixture and the last third of your sauce mixture. And then I just top that with a little bit of additional cheese and some parsley on top just for looks. Now just go ahead and place the lid on your crock pot, and you're going to let this cook on low for 3.5 to 4 hours. My crock pot can kind of be on the hot side, so I just put it at 3.5. And I just had an old sandwich sub roll that needed to get used up, so I cut it up and made it into some garlic bread with butter and cheese. This is what that looks like in the crock pot if you want to get a little shot of that. I served that with a side salad, and this was actually really good. We liked it. I liked how easy it is. It's one of my boyfriend's favorite meals is lasagna, so we really enjoyed that. This next meal is honey ham biscuit sliders. So I had a lot of russet potatoes I need to use up, so I went ahead and decided to make some just home style potato wedges. And you can use whatever seasonings and however many potatoes you would like. You're just gonna go ahead and cut them up, and I'm air frying them. They can also be baked in the oven. I will leave in the description bar a temp and a time if you prefer to do these in the oven. So all I do is put some oil on them, and then I sprinkle them with whatever seasonings. I'm just using some seasoned salt, some garlic powder, some ranch powder, some Tony Chachere's Creole seasoning, and I'm just going to give them all a good toss in all those seasonings and get them coated with the oil. And then I'll just go ahead and place those into my air fryer basket, and I'm going to air fry them at 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. Next, I'm going to be making some honey mustard, and you can use already pre-made if you would like. And I'm going to be combining 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise with a half a tablespoon of lemon juice, 2 to 3 tablespoons Dijon mustard, 2 tablespoons of honey, and 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne, and just go ahead and mix that all together. And I'm using a little silicone spoon here, which helps me also kind of push down on some of those clumps of mayonnaise you might get. So just a little tip that could be helpful for you. Now I'm taking my 9x13 baking dish, and I'm just giving that a spray with some cooking oil. Next, the recipe calls for 10 of the Grand's Junior biscuits. I'm just using 10 of the regular Grand's biscuits, and it tells you to split them in half. So as you can see me just pulling the layer, I'm putting one half down and I'm setting the other half to the biscuit just aside. And you're just going to do that with all 10 of your biscuits. Put the bottom halves on the bottom and set your tops aside. And at this part of the recipe, it tells you to use half of your honey mustard mixture and half of your cheese. And it does call for Swiss cheese. Actually, I'm going to use mozzarella to place them on here. Now, that is what I did, but I would recommend, if you don't like a soggy bottom of your biscuit, like I don't, to go ahead and bake these biscuits, the bottom halves by themselves. I'd say for about 5 minutes. I would check them, like just watch them for those few minutes or whatever, and see that they start to become golden brown, because for me, they just were soggy. Like the tops were nice and crispy and perfect, and that was a bummer because this was really delicious, but I think it could have been avoided by baking the bottoms for a little bit to start off with. So I still feel this recipe was so delicious and I loved how easy it was. So I still wanted to include it. I just wanted to make that little note. And there you'll see me having had put that Dijon mustard or honey mustard on top of the biscuit half, and then the cheese. And I did read the recipe wrong at first, and I put more cheese than I needed to on the bottom. I was only supposed to use half, and I believe I went over on that. Next, you'll need a half a pound of deli ham, and I'm using this Black Forest ham here. And you're gonna go ahead and just place slices on top of your biscuits. So I'm just placing 2 slices, kind of like bunched up to fit on the biscuit. I'm starting off with 2 slices just to see how much I'll have left over first, and 2 actually worked out. There was only like a piece left over, which I kind of just broke up and spread amongst all of them. It also says to take your biscuit tops and put half the Dijon and then half the cheese and then place them on top. I found that to be like it could be a disastrous mess trying to flip them over. So I'm just placing that Dijon right on top of the ham, and then I'll do the cheese layer and then top them with my biscuit tops. And next, I'm just melting a tablespoon of butter, and I'm going to go ahead and just use my little basting brush to baste that on the tops of the biscuits so they can become nice and golden and delicious. And you're going to go ahead and bake these at 400 degrees for about 12 to 15 minutes, depending. I just watched them at the end there and make sure my tops weren't getting too browned. And once those are done, you'll pull them out of the oven, and you're going to warm up 2 tablespoons of honey, and you'll see me starting to just drizzle it over on top, but I didn't like the way that looked, so I went ahead and grabbed my basting brush that I used for the butter, and I'm just going to go ahead and baste that honey on top of all of those biscuits. Don't those just look so delicious? They were really yummy. I ate one how I was saying, where the bottom was still a little soggy, didn't like that. I ended up taking my tops and meat off and putting the bottoms back in the oven and crisping those up, and they were way better that way. We really loved this meal. This last meal is creamy crack chicken soup. For this recipe, you were going to need about 4 cups of shredded chicken. I didn't have any already made or any rotisserie chicken, so I'm going to go ahead and do what I do when I need shredded chicken. So I'm placing 2 chicken breasts in the bottom of my Instant Pot with a half a cup of liquid, but I put some bouillon in there to make it into broth, and I sprinkled it with some garlic powder and onion powder. And I'm just going to cook that on manual for 10 minutes, and when it's done, I'm going to let that natural release for about another 10 minutes. And then just shred those chicken breasts up after they're all done. This recipe also calls for one small yellow onion. I did not have a lot of yellow onion left, so you'll see me basically trying to get every bit I can off of this little bit that I have here. But that's fine. I did have some red onion and it worked out just great. So yeah, so you'll see me cutting up a little bit of each of those to kind of equal what I think was about a half, or not a half, a small yellow onion. Next, I'm taking about 4 strips of thick cut bacon from this package of bacon here, and I'm just going to go ahead and set that on my cutting mat and just dice that up into some small bits that we are going to go ahead and fry up. I went ahead and heated my Dutch oven up to a medium high heat, and I'm placing those bits of bacon in there, and I'm just gonna fry those up until they're nice and crispy, making sure to stir them every so often so that all sides get nice and browned and don't just get stuck to the bottom of my Dutch oven. And once they are crispy, I'm just going to go ahead and remove those to another plate on the side, making sure to try to keep as much of that bacon grease as I can in my pot because we are going to use that. And next I'm just adding in about a tablespoon of butter, and you're going to go ahead and let that melt. I'm just using my little spatula here to kind of like help spread that around and let it melt as quickly as I can because I'm trying to get dinner done here. And once that's melted, you're going to go ahead and add in your diced up onions and just give those all a good stir to let them get coated with that bacon grease and butter. And you're going to let those cook for about 3 minutes. Next, I've got some garlic that I minced up and I'm going to add that in. It calls for 3 cloves. I believe I used 4 or 5 because I love garlic. And just go ahead and add that in there, give it all a good stir again, and let the garlic just cook for another 30 seconds or so until fragrant. And next, the recipe calls for 4 to 6 cups of chicken broth. I'm just using 4 to start off with, and I've just put some better than bouillon into my cup here of water, and I mix that together. So you'll see me at the end kind of just trying to make sure I get all that bouillon at the bottom and making sure that it gets into the pan. And then I'm just gonna deglaze with that. So I'm gonna use my spoon and just remove as many of that brown bits from the bottom of the pan with my spoon. Next, I'm adding in some seasoning. So I'm adding a half a teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a teaspoon of onion powder. I've got a half a teaspoon of dried dill weed. It calls for a half a teaspoon of dried chives, but I didn't have any. And then just some salt and pepper to taste. And go lightly on the salt here. Trust me, you can always add it later. It was even a little too salty and I didn't use much at all. And I would have preferred less. And now I'm just adding in 1 bay leaf, and I'm going to go ahead and just press that down into the liquid. And then bring that to a boil. Then you're going to go ahead and lower your heat to a medium low and let that cook for about 5 minutes. And once that time has gone by, you're going to go ahead and add in your shredded chicken, stir it in, and cook that for 5 more minutes. And at this point, I wanted a little more broth, so I just used that liquid that was left over from cooking the chicken in the Instant Pot, and which is almost an additional cup of chicken stock liquid. Now you're going to go ahead and add in a block of cream cheese, and I kind of cubed that up to make it easier to melt into the soup. And I'm just using a whisk like it says to help you blend that in there and make sure it melts and gets evenly distributed. And then once that's melted, I'm going ahead and adding in 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. I believe this is a sharp cheddar because I love sharp cheddar cheese. Then just go ahead and stir that in as well until it's nice and melted and combined. Next, it calls for 3 to 4 cups of baby spinach. I'm just using this 8-ounce bag of spinach. It does seem to be close to about 3 to 4 cups worth. And I'm just pressing that down into the soup liquid and gonna let that cook down for about 2 minutes, stirring along the way to make sure it all gets pressed down into the liquid. Next, I'm adding in 1/4 cup of heavy cream. I'm just going to give that all a good stir. And at this point, you can taste your soup for any additional salt or pepper you would need. I don't believe it needed really much salt at all. I did add some additional pepper, and I took that bay leaf out, and it was ready to go. Okay, y'all, this soup was really delicious. Like, it's called Crock soup for a reason. It is so good. We loved this. We of course topped it with that bacon that we cooked earlier and some green onions, and I served it. I had some leftover French bread, so I just served it with a piece of French bread. Oh wow, it was super good. Definitely did not disappoint. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future What's for Dinner videos, and I hope you all have an amazing week.